A Science of Change, podcasting by Gilmore Crosby, social scientist, author, and organization development professional since 1984. All right, so here we are today with one of my favorite humans, Mark Horswood, who has a unique journey of having been in a blue-collar role in industry and then becoming involved in organization development through my father, and then becoming a skilled organizational development professional for the last few decades. And I've had the pleasure of working with him. And so I think because in the OD work that I do, it's really important that you can't know a system if you don't have everyone in the system engaged. And that means the people that are actually doing the physical work. And that's not how most people do it. And so that's a big piece that's missing. But this is testimony that not only did my father do work where the hourly people, the people actually doing the physical work were involved, but some of them went on to get a 2-year master's degree and become OD professionals themselves. So, Mark, it's a pleasure having you here.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here, Gil.
I really appreciate you doing this, and I think the audience is going to get a real treat here listening to you.
I hope so.
I have no doubt. So I was hoping we'd start with what work life was like for you before you ever ran into my dad. You met him before you ever met me,
right.
And you were working at an aluminum smelter, I think first as not originally as an electrician, eventually as an electrician, but just say whatever you want to say about your experience in those days.
Well, once I met your dad and got involved with that work, my life, was completely different. I worked in the United Steelworkers, as a union member there. Worked at a plant in southern Indiana. Basically, it was, some of the worst. It was in a smelter, just molten metal and sparks flying. And I worked there, and I worked on the railroad crew as well. Laying tracks, tamping ties, changing out ties. Both of them pretty much just hard manual labor until I got involved in the OD work.
What was the, did you enjoy it in some ways?
I did. I like physical work, working on the railroad. And I don't know, it was hard work, but we just kind of took pride in being able to get it done under, rough conditions. I don't know, it was just kind of a testing ground, to see if you could, hang in there on the environment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been in those smelters. I mean, I know it's a tough environment. I never did physical work in them. Mm-hmm. I've always enjoyed every job I've ever had during the Great Recession, driving a cab to survive and digging ditches when I was a teenager. And so I believe you when you say that, there was, you liked it.
Yeah. I can tell the way you're talking about it, but yeah, there was just kind of some kind of heavy duty pride in being able to do it. And I liked them too. I think we didn't know any better. That's all. We started out doing that, and it seemed like, well, that's a thing to do. But not until I, look back on it and I think, oh my gosh, safety people and environmental people, health people would have something to say about the kind of environments we worked in.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was just kind of young and
Yeah, making some money, and so I believe that's true of most people. They're when they just get to do the work too. There's parts of it where like maybe you're getting where you're dealing with supervisors and management people, and it's or even peers, and it's there's conflict and stuff. But when you're just able to just do the job, uh, I don't know. I mean, I'm just
yeah, well, you mentioned the supervisors, and I could honestly say, and I know, in OD work, coaching people, I've said, hey, you know what? I've had literally 100 supervisors in my time. I've had 100 of them, working in different areas and different jobs, uh, and so you really get a feel for what kind of leadership style or what kind of supervisor style uh, that you can work with,
uh-huh.
and you also which ones that you least like style, and some that just rub against you the wrong way altogether. So I've had the whole range of supervisors, and I think it's just helped make me a better coach as I've gone out in the work world.
Makes sense. You've probably heard Dad talk about our grandfather, who was an hourly worker on the railroad in Pittsburgh. And at least when Dad was little, he remembers Grandpa coming home for maybe a year or two. He'd have a supervisor that he really liked. And then he'd have a supervisor for another period of time that wouldn't listen to a thing the worker said. And, even when they were trying to tell him that if we did something bad was going to happen. And then sure enough, people would get hurt and just how hard that was for him. Mm-hmm. And so it ain't easy. It ain't easy working for people.
Yeah, I can so relate. Actually, you talking, it reminds me of, the saying I've heard so many times before, and they say, people join companies, but they leave bosses.
Yep.
They go for the company, but then, they get sideways with the boss. And I can so relate to that.
Yeah, that's certainly what the data says.
And yes, I've heard your dad, talk about those times with his father many times. And I can so relate to that. I remember a supervisor asking me one time, I was going along with him coaching, and he said, why do you do this work, Mark? And I had been doing it for a number of years, and I thought, I never really was asked a question, so, outright like that. Why do you do it? But I thought for a while, well, if you do it and you love it, you ought to, have a thought on it or a belief on a philosophy. And so, I got thinking about it, and I thought, it's real similar to your father's in that I told that guy, I said, I just would like to make work a more humane place.
Mm-hmm.
I know it can be, and it's not complicated. And so, that's kind of just been my mantra or philosophy.
Nice. One of the things I love about what we do is that it goes together with making it easier to get the work done.
Mm-hmm.
So the same things that make it more enjoyable also tend to lead to, better productivity and all the metrics that management's after. And so it's just sort of crazy when people don't figure out how to treat people with respect and have them help think about what's happening. Anyway.
It seems to be, a habit. Management gets into where they're, used to being, saying how to do it, that it seems so simple that you wonder how come, earlier they didn't get to the point where, hey, these guys doing the work, they're the experts at it. I mean,
Yep.
They know where every tool needs to be, what kind of tool they need, what kind of timing they need from upstream and downstream.
Yep. What parts they can't get.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, so there you were doing your thing, and at some point you got elected, right, to be a union steward.
I was a union steward for a while on midnights in the pot room.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was actually, it was difficult for me.
Yeah.
Wondering, like kind of what's my role here? Sometimes I think, I see somebody's grievance entirely, and then sometimes it looked like they just wanted me to, get in there and be contentious.
Uh-huh. Even if you didn't necessarily agree with.
Yeah, and so I sometimes struggle with my role.
Yeah.
Do that best.
Yeah. Our dear departed friend Cotton Mears, who also worked at your smelter, he always, who also was a blue-collar guy that ended up being a great OD guy. He said, well, I got elected because I just fought with everybody. And so
yeah,
he elected me because I'd fight with anything, anything management said, I'd fight about it. I'd fight with them. Didn't matter what it was.
Yeah, Cotton and I worked in the same area. And, yeah, he was famous for that. He was famous for that. Another place that, I eventually used principles of, that your father taught was on the union. I was on the insurance committee. And that was, I'm just saying it was an important committee in that, we helped negotiate for and design health insurance benefits, which were, really growing in cost and is important, factor for the union. And so, it was, a lot of work between my union membership and members in there, and dealing with doctors and upper levels of alcohol management.
That's a tough, contentious issue because it's so expensive for companies and it's so important for each individual.
Mm-hmm.
And people get nickeled and dimed to death on that, I think. But so, well, how'd it go?
It actually, it just was difficult at the beginning, and then I just got to the point where I would just listen more to them, and just not take it as a. I think earlier, like if somebody had a problem with the health benefits, they would come to me and. And I just think I frankly was defensive about it and, not very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And just didn't take the time to listen well to what their grievance was and to be able to understand it. It seemed like in the beginning when I was less skilled at it, I'd get in there and somebody have a problem and they'd say something in the lunchroom or the break room and it'd just feel like I was, fighting off a mob and, how could I get out of there quick? And, how can I escape? And it just wasn't very effective.
So how did you first run into organization development? Was it Dad that you first ran into?
Yeah, it was Dad and a team.
Uh-huh.
Actually, he brought quite a team with him from Leos Consulting. There was your dad, Patricia, his wife, Brenda and Danny, Jack Fontaine. I think there was Tom McCombs. There probably was, I mean, this might be the most ever, but there are probably 8 or 9 or 10
Uh-huh.
consultants because actually I was with the first group of union United Steelworkers that went to what your dad called tough stuff,
Mm-hmm.
a week of training. And so they said, who can go? And he goes, well, any of the union guys you want to. Well, I think there was something like 60 people in that group.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had breakout groups, so that's why he had so many consultants.
Right.
But I remember it was so interesting. I first went there just out of casual interest. And then, I remember sitting in the back. I thought, got me a donut and a cup of coffee and sat down and started listening to them. And I thought, wow, this stuff's pretty interesting. It was so my style to, first day just kind of sit in the back and just see what going down.
Sure, that makes sense.
And, the first day I was saying, wow, this is really interesting. Well, I found myself, it was a week-long training.
Mm-hmm.
Myself, second day, I was kind of in the middle of the crowd. I was checking it out a little more, and I thought, boy, this is really making an impact on me. And the third day, on Wednesday, I remember I was right up front, right in the middle, like you're just right feet from the presenter. And I just remember being so impressed with the principles and the self-awareness and recognition of patterns that I even remember. I mean, it was so long ago, but I remember the presenter up there was from Australia. He was part of the group, Peter West.
Mm.
I just remember sitting there and thinking, I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what kind of degree or certification you got to get. I'm going to do this work. I'm just going to go. And I think the biggest thing was he was saying it was so helpful for him dealing with his 7-year-old daughter.
Mm.
He said that's where actually he just got the most value out of it.
Mm-hmm.
At the time I had a 7-year-old daughter, and I thought, man, I'd like to be able to be, that helpful in that regard too. And so, I was so taken with just the value of it. And I said, I want to do that. And I just so lucked out because it wasn't 2 weeks later, Gil, our union president, Jess Sharber, and the plant manager came to me and they said, from being a member of the insurance committee, they said, hey, would you be interested in taking this 2 years master's program, to be able to do this work? And I thought, that's exactly what I'd like to do.
Well, I'm getting goosebumps.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I do every time I think back on it. I get a lump in my throat. And I mean, it's just like things were just coming to, fruition so fast. And so I got in that 2 years master program. And I tell you what, in so many ways, I mean, it's such a pivotal change in my life, and probably, 2 of the best years of my life being in that community of people. I think in our class of first years and second years, there were 65 people, and probably 55 of them were from Alcoa.
And yeah, the corporate leadership program. So, Mark, I get goosebumps. It was, I think, a great moment in history when you happened to be there, and then the way you took it and moved forward in your life, which has made a big difference in my life. So, and I want to just add a little context to all that. Maybe it's more mundane, but so you mentioned the breakouts and the tough stuffs, and not all of our listeners know that that was a time when people would go off into what was called a T group. It was called a skill group in Alcoa, but it was Kurt Lewin's T group, where people are just learning about themselves by paying attention to their immediate reactions to the other people in the group and their emotions in the moment, et cetera, and talking about that. And then that whole 2-year program you were in, which I gotta say, I think my dad is a genius in many ways, but this was the only corporate leadership program I've ever heard of, where hourly workers, union representatives, I think mostly of the hourly workers, they were mostly union stewards and so on, and leadership. I could be wrong about that, but and plant managers and supervisors, and we're all mixed together, learning together, about how to be better, more functional humans in a system, and how to work with each other. And it's a crying shame there's not more of it. But the last thing I'm going to pitch this back to you is that that 2-year program just started again, and you just were a guest and a very helpful guest in Pittsburgh, where one group of students is working through it. But LEO's, the Leadership Institute of Seattle, is just coming back to rebirth, thanks to my brother Chris. Mm-hmm. And so that same 2-year opportunity is once again in the world for people to take advantage of. So that was a lot, I know. And so I just want to toss it back to you. So there you were. It wasn't long after you ran into the OD people, including my dad, that you were already in the corporate graduate program, which went on for 15 years in Alcoa. And so, just talk some about that. Like, how did that start to affect you and your work life, your personal life?
I had a little experience with, working with the salary group. And certainly didn't air out problems with them, either union problems with them or their, problems they had. But in that 2-year program, working with, upper management mostly, mm-hmm. I just got thinking, they run into the same kind of problems we do. I mean, it's, relationship and roles and, and I just thought there's just a lot of commonality on that just hasn't been shared with before.
Like frustration over not getting things done and blaming others, and
not being heard, and mm-hmm. not being having a responsive supervisor.
Yep. Afraid to talk to their own bosses.
Yeah. I had gone into that from the very beginning, and I thought, I went into it to do the work. I wanted to do that type of consulting and make my living like that. This seemed like just such a, a helpful thing to have. And most of my classmates were basically upper management in, mm-hmm. In Alcoa's corporate world. And so, then I got an opportunity, they said, hey, would you like to be a presenter, this, and, not just a student. And so, went up to Seattle and went to their train the trainer program and be able to start doing tough stuffs with your father and Tom McCombs and Aldous Gordon. Actually, Cotton and I both just had such a lucky opportunity. We basically were like interns or just got tutored for 2 years traveling with Tom and Aldous mm-hmm. all over the place. First started doing some work within our plant there, just working with supervisors and crews. And then, in the plant in Tennessee, start working there. And then, just other plants from all over the United States start calling. And, your dad had touched them in different ways and they wanted more train more of their crew in tough stuff material. And then ended up, crossing paths with you, and you and I worked together.
Yeah, you were still an Alcoa employee, I think, when we first were put together in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. And,
it was just a great time. got a lot of experience with different groups and different individuals and different consultants.
Well, sometimes I wonder, I mean, you and Cotton emerged out of that process in a different way than there was a lot of other hourly workers. And, I think I wish I want to figure out how to maybe connect with some of the others that graduated from that and see what they're doing. And maybe they're still young enough to do some more stuff. We're all getting older.
Yeah. I'm just a firm believer in, I don't want to sound like mystical about this, but, I think Cotton and I both, just had this vision of, what it could be. And I think having it just kind of just guided our actions to come into those opportunities to, train and work with some of the Leos consultants. And because I know each part that I dream about doing, and, shortly it'd come true, about around. I thought, man, I'd love to do this for a living. And then soon that'd be, true. And then I'd like to travel overseas and do this. And then soon that would. And so I think there's something about, just having a vision for it that I know it had a profound impact on me.
Yep. And going after what you want. Well, I remember meeting you there in Jamaica. So I had been on my own journey and started in '84 with my dad and was mentored by him, had that privilege of being mentored directly by him. And then by 1999, I had left Pico Nuclear, and it was the first time I was leading a tough stuff outside of Pico Nuclear. I had led a bunch of them inside. And, so Dad had asked whether I'd be willing to go to Jamaica, which seemed like a silly question, of course. And he told me he was sending a guy to work with me. And so there you were, the two of us. And I've just appreciated how easy it's been really to work with you. We've had our differences, but we've always been able to work them out.
Yes.
But it got to, for me also, you became like like an ace up my sleeve or something. If I was going into like at Sherwin Illumina to do a tough stuff with the plant management and the senior union leadership team, to have you along was like worth $1 million in terms of just the union leadership's likely trust. I mean, of course, they came into things with mistrust, as did a lot of the management people. But I remember that union leader standing out in the hall. He wouldn't even come in the room at first.
Yeah, I remember that.
I haven't made up my mind yet, and the vice president said something like, the HR guy said something, and the vice president said, I don't know what he said, but I'm against it.
I know, I remember that. I was smiling thinking about it.
Yeah, it was a classic moment. You'd think they had staged it or something. But anyway, then you'd be out there on breaks, just chatting with the guys, and even for management who often didn't know or didn't trust engaging hourly people. Just having your presence helped break that stuff down easy a lot. So
yeah, certainly yours did.
What's that?
Sitting here smiling while you're talking about that because just looking back, some I don't know, it's probably not right exactly accurate to call war stories, but I remember some of the challenges. And I remember that time that guy, the HR guy, was John was his name.
Yeah, John. Yeah.
And when that guy, he was sitting right next to me, and he said, "I don't know what he said, but I don't believe him." And I thought he was kidding for a second.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that place was really polarized, and
Yep.
like so many times. I mean, there's something about Tough Stuff and T Group in particular that people really can find some common ground.
Yep. Well, one principle which I just really love is that people have to think for themselves and be able to say what they actually think without being, sort of like forced to only say nice things and be heard. And we've got ways of helping people do that where they get to be heard and it doesn't just turn into a fight. And then pretty soon they're actually talking together about how to fix things.
Yes.
And that's what matters. But that group came out of that tough stuff. They went in bitter and they came out. It's like halfway through the week. Now, I think you were in the other room by then because we would break out into 2 T groups. But I had the plant manager and the union president. And it was the union president who said to the plant manager in the T group, I never actually listened to you.
That is so profound.
Yeah.
I mean, so fundamental for, starting to hear it a different way. I'm not sure if this is the place for this, but, I'm just thinking about that location that we went into.
Yeah.
And I can relate to it in my own self. Our relationship with the company, with salary management, was so contentious that, it was just almost like warfare.
Yep.
When I showed up with you in Corpus Christi, it looked like the exact same kind of a situation. Very contentious.
Just like your old smelter.
Just like that. It felt so familiar.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I noticed that when you have a contentious like that, there's people in the union that seem to rise up to the occasion to kind of be warriors for your side, and they're needed and they're valued, and
yep.
They have prestige and a place of importance. Well, what I noticed at our place and at Corpus Christi is also was when the relationship starts getting better, there's less and less need for those warriors.
Yep.
And so a lot of times they are doing things that look like it's just stirring up trouble, when I think they don't want to lose that role that they've got.
Sure, they're playing a role in the system. People feel powerless.
Exactly, and so when they need that type of behavior less, I think it's just important to find a new way for them to be.
Yep. Well, Kurt Lewin, who really started all this stuff, would say consistently, well, those are the guys who's complaining. Those are the ones we want in this room. Who do you think the troublemakers are? Okay, let's make sure they're in this conversation. And because people are just, and really people who are being silent need to be heard too. So
I'm sitting there smiling hearing you say that because, it seems so counterintuitive that you say, well, we're trying to get something done. Why bring in the troublemakers?
We just had a great experience like that at the plant we're working at in Indiana. You weren't there, but my brother and I, where we were getting ready to do this planning process where we involve hourly workers, and which should happen every day on a regular basis everywhere. But anyway, but we're doing a process that involves them, and one person, they said, well, whatever you do, this is the group of students that's been working with us all year. Whatever you do, you can't have this person in the room. And, Chris and I were both consistent in saying that's exactly who we want in the room. And so oh my God. So they had them in a couple people like that they named that they said this, there's no way that this person will be helpful. And both of those people came in, participated in the structure that we had. And at the end of it, the people who had said, don't bring them were going, oh my God, they were so different. So thank you. I'm so glad they were here, and et cetera. So part of it's people just get stuck in how they interact and don't know how to get unstuck.
It has me thinking about so many times that you and I've done tough stuff, and the leader comes in the first day, and he, says why he's doing it and what he hopes to get out of it. And it seems like so many of them say, man, the body language and what they're saying is so different on Friday from what it is on Monday when they come in. We usually have the boss come back, and then, even though they've been through tough stuff, they're surprised at just what kind of gains that made with the participants.
Sure, yeah. As each person talks at the end about what they thought was their most important learning and what they're trying to do, it's usually pretty radically different than the mood on Monday morning. Yeah. Well, look, I just want to go back to that bauxite refinery for a second in Corpus Christi and finish that story, which is that the union president really was the one who said, I never actually listened to you. I'm just, thinking about what I'm going to say next. And the plant manager, bless his heart, said, I never listened to you either. And so just that moment was the beginning of a new kind of collaboration between those two people, and which really shifted the whole system. I mean, when you're fighting at the top, you're probably going to have a fight throughout the whole system. And it's hard not to. But, well, Mark, it was a pleasure having you recently with us in the LEOS program, teaching.
Yeah, my pleasure, Gil. My pleasure.
Yeah. Do you have like advice? If you were giving advice to leaders,
I think it would be this. When we worked in the bauxite mine in Jamaica, we just had a great leader there, Jerome Maxwell. He was a great leader. And I remember when I was there one time, he said, oh, I got to get out there on the floor, with my guys, because it'd been 2 weeks. And I got thinking about the plant that I worked at, and I thought, man, our leader hadn't been out there for 2 years.
Yeah.
I think it's such an important thing. But the irony was that any time that leader that hadn't been out there in 2 years, anytime he made an attempt to do it, he'd catch so much flack.
Right.
Driving back to his office.
Yep.
And so my advice would be just like, you got to hang in there at the beginning. Yep. I remember a time that Cotton and I, did some work between just a pot room supervisor and his crew. And he first, introduced us to the crew, and there's probably 20 people in there. And he said, we'd like to work out, a better way for us to work together, and, what you guys need and how I can help. And I remember he left. That's when, the relationship between company and the union was so contentious.
Mm-hmm.
And he left. And I remember Cotton and I were standing up front, and we go, what kind of issues do you have? And I mean, it was just like a blast from a atom bomb went off, so venting. And I remember looking at Cotton. We just started doing the work. I looking at Cotton, I was thinking, man, we made a big mistake asking that. But it was just one of those things, like they said, give somebody 2 minutes to vent, or it may take 7 years. is just being, patient and just, hearing them. And
Yep.
we worked with that crew for probably 3 different times. And I mean, the first time it was just like warfare. And then I remember looking at them on the third visit, and they, the supervisor would say something like, "We need to do that," and his crew would take up for him and say, "Well, that's not your fault. I mean, it just was totally different. But so the basic point of that thing is, hey, don't give up. At the very beginning, when people come on to you strong, especially if they're not used to being heard,
Yep.
or then it's a brand new time, a brand new thing, and they'll just let loose and vent. If you can hang in there, stay connected.
I think that's why so many management people in management positions are afraid that if they ask opinions, they're just going to get what they call a bitch session because they've sort of experimented with it, and then yes, people are pissed off, and then they've stopped, and then nothing else happens. So I really like what you're saying. You gotta be prepared if you're first dabbling in really listening to people or going out on the floor for the first time. If people are honest, they're probably going to vent, let off some steam, and it might be kind of ugly. And the other thing is that the higher you go in an organization, the more training you get in how to put things and how to manage yourself during conflict and communication skills, and so people need to be patient if they're asking the honest opinion of people that haven't had all that training.
Mm-hmm.
So I've intervened, many times where people spoke up and just said something like, "Well, you don't have our back,"
Mm-hmm.
and then had the leader afterwards privately say, "That was disrespectful. I'm going to discipline them." And I'm like, if you do that, no one's ever going to speak up again until they can't stand it anymore, and then they'll try. But you
mentioned, as you move up in an organization, oftentimes you're exposed to training or seminars or how-tos, and
yep.
And that is helpful. And that's why I would say, in that meeting we had with the pot room supervisor and the pot room employees, I mean, probably in just work environment, that's probably the lowest on there. I mean, it's just like the salt mines. But I mean, so some other advice I give is, if you've got a skilled facilitator in your organization, just to help you navigate through that some of that opening energy of venting, to be able to utilize that positively. Sometimes, I just am a big believer. A trained facilitator can help you there a lot.
Sure. It's wise to get help when relationships are stuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And whether it's personal or work. And one of the things I love about what we do, Mark, is that you mentioned this earlier when you mentioned the 7-year-old daughter of the OD person. Just I think we have impacted thousands of families where people are not just learning how to talk differently at work about frustrating stuff, but they're also realizing that maybe they could change their behavior at home with their kids and their wives, and where it's even harder, I think. People go home, they want to let their hair down and just be themselves and not even think about what they're doing, and hopefully just get a bunch of warmth. And it doesn't always work out that way. So anyway, that's one thing I love about this.
I'd love that too, Gil. We all always, poll the group about how valuable this was to them, in their job, and how valuable this is to them at home.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, it usually ranks higher at home, the use of the skills are at home than at work.
Yep. High on both, but higher at home.
Yeah, a bit higher. And
yeah,
for me personally, it's like whenever you see somebody or somebody comes up to you and says, they just from being exposed to some of the theories and group dynamics and patterns and self-awareness. I mean, some of the breakthroughs they've had at home is just so rewarding to hear.
Yeah.
It wasn't too long ago, you and I were involved with a group, and, the guy was saying, I think it was on a Monday, he said, yeah, he and his son, got in an argument, and they had some harsh words, and he left, and you were questioning him. You said, well, so what will happen next? He said, well, we'll go a couple months and then, kind of ease back into talking. And he said, are you cool with that? And something like that. He goes, yeah, that's the way we do it. Well, it was on Wednesday or Thursday. He came Thursday morning. He said, his son came by and he said, they got talking. And he said, before you knew it, he said it was midnight. His son and his son got talking for 3 hours. And he said, it just from listening to him, really listening instead of trying to get his point across. When people come to you with stories like that, I think, man, it makes it so worthwhile.
Yep. It's worth whatever stress we go through. That's golden. That stuff's golden. I'm thinking of.
I always think that'll carry me through for 6 months.
Yeah. It's. I feel a little silly about this, but I'm remembering just. And there's been a bunch of these types of moments where people came in on like Wednesday or Thursday morning, and we haven't talked to each other about, well, what's happened since you were here yesterday, and one guy said just something as simple as, my son was mowing the lawn, and I said thank you to him. And it's the first time I've ever done that.
Yeah, that's cool. It's often simple things like that.
Yep. And it choked them both up, it was an important moment for both of them. Yep. So, well, look, I love working with you. I am at 64, and you're getting close to when life starts, right?
Yes, sir. I'm looking forward to it.
Just a few years ahead of me, and anyway, I look forward to getting back in the saddle again with you. I see that happening, and it's
friend anytime. I mean, I hope we have some more of those moments together and with groups and with people.
Yep.
Look forward to it.
And changing systems so that again, so that they not only are people happier. Which reminds me of how Cotton used to describe your smelter of the emotional condition, where he said, we had two emotions, pissed off or not pissed off.
That's the only ones I recognize.
That was the whole spectrum. Yeah. But anyway, not only are people less stressed, less tense, but they're actually also, getting the work is flowing smoother. And so the company's making more money, which is better, should be at least, is better for everybody. Mm-hmm. More, at least there's more stability and so on. So I love it. And I love working with you. And I appreciate you being willing to put some of this for all eternity now. People will have this recording to listen to.
Hey, anytime, my friend.
Okay, you got anything else you want to say?
Go Steelers.
Well, that's a good thing to say. You go Colts.
I'm just giving you that.
Okay, well, that's kind of you.
Yeah.
You're a river to your people.
I am. Actually, I've changed that. I'm now... My wife said she wanted me to put I'm a river to my person.
Well, she deserves it. She deserves to have the whole river. Okay. Well, you said earlier why you do this. what you love about it. You mind saying that again?
Yeah.
Or putting it into a different, yeah. Go ahead.
The guy asked me, and I thought, I've been doing this for a while. It seemed like I, should have, a ready reply for him. But I did think a bit, and I just thought, I just would like to and think I can make work a more humane place.
Nice.
Just don't dread going in and talking to the boss or your colleagues and, work. It just, maybe it's not like heaven, but it's make it certainly a lot more palatable.
That's a worthy vision. That for
I guess the last thing I would say too, I was saying Jerome Maxwell said he hadn't been out on the floor in 2 weeks, and he said his guys would be giving him a hard time. But another thing I thought about, and just all the leaders that you and I have, worked with, and I was thinking the common denominator out of all of them was one, they had a vision that was so compelling and so clear that people could understand it and get behind it. And Jerome certainly had that. He also, another thing is they really were in touch with their people, like him getting out on the floor and just talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
That two, and then three, they just were great listeners. I mean, a lot of times people think, leaders, great orators, great talkers, speakers, but the ones that I've seen are really good were just great listeners.
That all makes sense, man. And that vision, I still remember it. That bauxite refinery was the most expensive producer of bauxite in the Alcoa system. And so he could just get on a flip chart and say, here we are. And look, guess what's going to happen if there's ever a recession?
Yeah.
And here's the plants that are at the top, what they're making it for. And we need to at least be tied with those plants. They were big Australian plants. Yeah, it was that simple.
Oh, Gil, I mean, that probably happened to us, I don't know, 25 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was saying it's so clear and compelling because I can remember just like yours, relating it. I remember him saying he had a draft drawn out. He said, right now we're number 8. By 6 months, I want to be number 4. Then he just had a crystal clear path.
Yep. And then he used us to help involve the workers in reducing raw material loss in the system, which was a huge, they saved millions every year by doing that. And the workers loved it because they knew what to do and no one had been listening to them. They were watching all this, stuff leak out all over the place. And it was just better in every way. So that was one of the many fun successes that I'm proud to have been part of with you.
Me too, my friend.
Okay, well, look, all things must end, and so I'm going to end this. Mark, I think I'm going to call this Blue Collar OD Professional.
Okay, I like it.
Okay, cool. Well, that's probably going to be the title, and so that is.
What you got to think about, I got a blue collar on right now, so.
Okay. And some cowboy boots?
No cowboy boots.
No boots today? Okay. Well, anyway, it's been a real pleasure, and it continues to be. So thank you.
Yes, my pleasure too, Gil.
And that is a wrap on to this podcast.
All righty. Goodbye.
Okay, you take care, man. And thank you, listeners. There'll be more. Hey, I appreciate you listening. This, again, is Gil Crosby. And I want you to take advantage of what's available to you. I have many free materials. I am happy to talk to people about their situations, especially if you're trying to create change, either social change or organization change. We have frequent workshops that are available, T group workshops. If you have never been in a T group with us, then don't miss it in your life. It's many people have said to me, of all the trainings I've ever received, I got this one 30 years ago, and it's the only one that stuck with me. You're learning from your actual interactions with the other participants and with the faculty. The faculty are walking the same talk that they're teaching of behavioral skills. It's a training workshop. That's what the T stands for. This is done in the spirit of the creation of T groups by Kurt Lewin and his associates. It's for groups. It's for teams. That's how it was originally designed. It is a opportunity to learn about theory and put it directly into practice. Again, the original design, you learn things and then you put them into practice. It was not just all ambiguity, which is how some T groups, most are led today, where the faculty hardly says anything. That's not how this is designed. So join us for that. There's always workshops. There's the Leadership Institute of Seattle, which has certificate programs, a two-year program where you will learn from T groups and learn how to do all the organization development work that my father designed, most of it, and I continue that practice alongside my brother Chris and many other associates. So don't be a stranger. There's a lot going on. It's always changing. So be in touch, and it's on the website, crosbyod.com. I look forward to working with you in your organization or as you pursue things like reducing gun violence and decreasing racism in our society. Whatever your goals are, the social science of Kurt Lewin guides how to achieve those goals in a reliable way. And so that's what I apply and practice every day and invite you to.